Imagine saving over 1 billion lives, not with weapons, politics, or technology, but with wheat. This is the story of Norman Borlaug, the man many people call the father of the Green Revolution. Yet, despite changing the course of human history, most people have never heard his name. Norman Borlaug was born in 1914 on a small farm in Iowa, United States. His family wasn't wealthy. As a child, he spent long days helping with farm work, planting crops, feeding animals, and learning how difficult it was to grow food. Life on the farm taught him a lesson he would never forget. If crops failed, people suffered. During the Great Depression, millions of Americans struggled to survive. Jobs disappeared, families went hungry, and uncertainty filled everyday life. Young Norman saw firsthand how closely human lives depended on food production. Despite financial challenges, he was determined to get an education. He attended the University of Minnesota, where he studied forestry and plant science. At first, he planned to work in forests, not farms, but then something changed his life forever. During college, Borlaug learned about the devastating effects of hunger around the world. Entire communities were trapped in poverty because crops couldn't produce enough food. Diseases destroyed harvests, droughts ruined fields, population growth made the problem even worse. Most experts at the time believed that large-scale famines were inevitable. They thought humanity simply couldn't grow enough food for everyone. Norman Borlaug refused to believe that. He became fascinated with plant genetics and agricultural research. What if scientists could create stronger crops? What if wheat could resist disease? What if farmers could harvest much more food from the same land? These questions became his obsession. After earning his doctorate, Borlaug accepted a research position in Mexico in the 1940s. At the time, Mexico struggled to produce enough wheat for its growing population. The country depended heavily on imported grain. Many researchers before him had failed. The challenge seemed almost impossible. But Norman Borlaug wasn't interested in excuses. He was about to begin a mission that would eventually change the future of global agriculture and save countless lives.
When Borlaug arrived in Mexico, the situation was worse than he expected. Wheat crops were constantly attacked by a deadly fungal disease called stem rust. Entire fields could be destroyed within weeks. Farmers worked hard all year only to watch their harvests disappear. For many scientists, the problem seemed unsolvable. But Borlaug had a different approach. Instead of conducting slow experiments that took years, he worked faster than almost anyone else. He traveled constantly between different regions of Mexico, growing multiple generations of wheat every year instead of just one. His colleagues thought he was crazy, but Borlaug believed hunger wasn't waiting, so science couldn't wait either. Day after day, year after year, he crossbred thousands of wheat varieties. Most experiments failed. Some crops were weak, others couldn't survive disease, yet he never stopped. Eventually, his persistence paid off. Borlaug developed new wheat varieties that were highly resistant to stem rust. Even better, these plants produced much larger harvests than traditional wheat. But another problem appeared. The new wheat plants grew so tall that they often collapsed under the weight of their own grain. Farmers call this problem lodging. When plants fell over, much of the crop was lost. Many researchers would have accepted partial success. Norman Borlaug didn't. He searched for dwarf wheat varieties from around the world and began crossing them with his disease-resistant plants. The result was revolutionary. The new wheat plants were shorter, stronger, and capable of supporting much heavier grain production. For the first time, farmers could use fertilizer aggressively without worrying that their crops would collapse. Harvests exploded. Mexican wheat production increased dramatically. Fields that once struggled to feed communities suddenly produced surplus grain. Within a few years, Mexico transformed from a country dependent on imported wheat into a nation capable of feeding itself. It was one of the greatest agricultural achievements of the 20th century, but Borlaug knew his work was far from finished, because beyond Mexico, an even greater crisis was waiting. By the 1960s, many experts predicted massive famines across Asia. Countries like India and Pakistan had rapidly growing populations. Food production couldn't keep pace. Millions faced the threat of starvation. Some economists warned that hundreds of millions of people might die from hunger within a few decades. The world was preparing for disaster. Norman Borlaug believed disaster could still be prevented. He traveled to South Asia carrying seeds from his improved wheat varieties. His goal was simple but ambitious: help farmers produce far more food than ever before. The challenges were enormous. Poor infrastructure, political obstacles, transportation delays, and skepticism from local officials threatened the project at every step. Some critics argued that Borlaug's methods wouldn't work in Asia. Others said it was too late. But once again, Borlaug focused on results rather than opinions. Farmers began planting the new wheat. The results were astonishing. Harvests increased dramatically across India and Pakistan. Fields that previously produced modest yields suddenly generated record-breaking amounts of grain. Food shortages began to ease, predictions of catastrophic famines started to disappear. The transformation became known as the Green Revolution. It wasn't just about wheat. New farming techniques, improved irrigation, fertilizers, modern crop varieties, and scientific agriculture spread throughout many developing countries. Food production increased on a scale the world had never seen before. Millions of families gained greater food security. Entire nations became more self-sufficient. Some estimates suggest that Borlaug's innovations helped save more than 1 billion lives from hunger and starvation. Think about that for a moment. Very few individuals in history have influenced so many human lives. Yet Borlaug rarely sought attention. While others celebrated his achievements, he remained focused on the next challenge, because in his mind, the fight against hunger was never truly finished.
In 1970, Norman Borlaug received the Nobel Peace Prize. It was an unusual award for an agricultural scientist, but the Nobel Committee recognized a powerful truth. Food security creates stability, reduces suffering, and promotes peace. By helping feed millions, Borlaug had contributed to a more peaceful world. Yet even after receiving one of the world's highest honors, he didn't slow down. He continued traveling, researching, teaching, and supporting agricultural development across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. His message remained consistent. Science should serve humanity. Innovation should solve real problems. And no child should suffer from hunger when solutions are possible. Of course, the Green Revolution wasn't perfect. Some critics pointed to environmental concerns, fertilizer dependence, and other long-term challenges. Borlaug acknowledged that agriculture must continue evolving. But he also believed that preventing mass starvation was one of humanity's most urgent responsibilities. For decades, he dedicated his life to that mission. When Norman Borlaug passed away in 2009 at the age of 95, he left behind a legacy unlike almost any other scientist in history. The food eaten by billions of people today is connected, in some way, to the agricultural breakthroughs he helped pioneer. And yet his name remains surprisingly unknown. Perhaps that's because Borlaug wasn't interested in fame. He cared about results. He cared about farmers. He cared about feeding the world. So the next time you sit down for a meal, remember this. One man spent his entire life fighting an invisible enemy called hunger. And through determination, science, and relentless hard work, Norman Borlaug helped change the future of humanity forever. The man who fed the world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Join us for more incredible stories that change the world.